right, welcome to another special episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we usually take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. But today on the show, it is the end of the decade, and we are continuing our series on the end of the decade. Last time we did the top video games that came out in the last 10 years, and now we are talking about the top TV shows. Again, bending the format of this show as much as possible. But hey, TV is related to movies, and I mean, come on, we wanted to talk about all of these shows that we love so much, and what better way to do it than do a crossover with our other podcast, Bird Road Podcast, which, yes, has been on a little bit of a hiatus lately, but me and Q are always talking about TV shows. Honestly, part of the reason Piecing It Together was even born was out of us constantly turning the conversation onto TV, and then I would turn it on to movies, and I always wanted to talk about movies instead of politics, and then I started my own podcast. But Bird Road, we're gonna do some more Bird Road in the future, I think. I mean, I don't know, Q would probably disagree with me, but it might happen. It might happen. Actually, we're supposed to record some this weekend, so we'll see what happens with that. But I do want to remind you, well, before I remind you about all the stuff I always remind you about, I do want to let you know that Q edited this one for Bird Road. We posted it up on there a week ago. So this one was not edited by me, so it might be a little different in the flow and feel of things. So, you know, just keep that in mind. But Q is a consummate professional and does an amazing job when he does this stuff. So I'm sure it came out amazingly. So, remind you to make sure you are subscribed to Piecing It Together on your podcast app of choice. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Podchaser, and follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. And also, make sure to check out Bird Road Podcast, where, like I said, there might be a new episode coming up soon. Maybe. Well, Q's made some without me. He doesn't even tell me about that, but I'm glad he's doing that. And I think we're going to make a new episode soon. So, go subscribe to Bird Road.
So, Dave, why don't you explain to people what we're doing here, like what the subject matter of today's episode is?
Absolutely. Well, you know, on Piecing It Together, we mainly just talk about movies, TV shows come up every once in a while, but I wanted, as we're getting to the end of the decade here, obviously we're doing a top 10 movies of the decade list on Piecing It Together, but I'm also doing a top 10 film scores of the decade. I'm doing a top 10 video games of the decade, and I thought it would make sense to do a top 10 TV shows of the decade. And of course, Q is the person to do that with, because Q and I, we talk about TV a lot, and so it made a lot of sense to do this with him. And then, even though we've been on a little bit of a Bird Road break lately, he kind of took the reins and sent me a big old little thing in Google Docs to fill out with a whole bunch of information and to
I just
really
realized,
fill
is this
thing
a good way for me to be able to pawn off editing onto you?
Yeah, I mean, you're getting a Bird Road episode edited by me because of this whole shindig that we're doing.
So apologies in advance, everyone, for when the drift kicks in at like the 24th minute and just continues for like another 18 minutes.
I promise that wouldn't be my fault. Oh my God, no, drinking beer.
So
yeah.
TV's my shit, Dave. It's not
I
so
know.
much your shit anymore. You and I used to watch TV constantly.
I try to fit in a little TV here and there, but it's just I can't do it. It's really hard.
One of the things I realized in like looking at this whole decade of television is that I didn't watch TV in the previous decade. I had some cult things that you and I basically wore the DVDs out of.
Yeah.
Stella, Strangers with Candy, Upright Citizens Brigade, like maybe 10 or 15 different movies, Death to Smoochie, shit like that.
Mhm.
We would just like come home after a night of living actual life,
Right,
at
exactly.
like 2 or 3 in the morning, and just fall asleep to the DVD menu of, you know, Fight Club or something. I don't know, or like
Well, let's be honest. Most of the time, it was Strangers with Candy.
Strangers with Candy.
More than
was
anything.
the DVD music that we woke up to with like Cottonmouth and like, you know, with the sun peeking in.
Wake up and eat cold pizza.
You wake up and eat cold pizza and barf. But that all changed in this decade for me, at least, in a way that Like I really am, I think, like a connoisseur of TV. I'm really not doing the things I used to do. I'm not going out at night. My life, such as it is, happens in between the hours of like 7 in the morning and like 9 o'clock at night.
Mm.
Um, it's a much sort of more compact life, and I wonder if that happened to everybody. I had put on this list of like topics for us to talk about and get into as we sort of go through a few like sort of obligatory categories before we jump into our top 10 list. I just wanted to say, like, what do you think happened? I mean, taking all the bread and circuses, right? What they
Mhm.
say, the entertainment, the distractions, the things that keep us, I don't know, like make life worth living or whatever.
Right.
The sort of fulfilling and unfulfilling, community work, going out and being physically active. First time you and I ever hung out, actually, you don't remember this, but it was on a basketball court, in
That
Sunset
seems
Park.
highly unlikely.
No, it
But
was. It was at Sunset Park in Las Vegas, in Henderson, Nevada. And yeah, we had met in other places, but we hung out on a basketball court and played basketball with a bunch of other guys.
nice.
Um, who does that anymore? Who's out with their friends playing basketball? Like
I have to imagine somebody is, and we're just too old. And that, I mean, really, that's what it comes down to. I have another answer, but I do think the main one is, as far as for you
so,
and
like, what
I,
happened? Yeah,
well,
that's
yeah,
the question. Is like,
we
what
got
happened
we got
with this
older.
decade of television?
That's the main thing. But no, what happened with television itself, I really truly do think the answer is Netflix. I mean, like so much content that it's impossible. There's so much constantly, and it's not just Netflix's output, but every other network and studio has to compete with what Netflix is doing. So you've got Netflix upping the amount by multitudes over what any kind of just regular you know uh, sitcom or whatever network show used to be able to do, and now everyone else has to catch up with them. So they all have way more content at the same time. So there just becomes just so many shows all at once, and it's exhausting. You
For me,
know.
it's crazy the combinations of things where it was like there used to be these novel things where it was like, oh, this is the TV show that's about war. And then it's like, oh, this is the TV show that's about a bar. And
Right.
now
Right.
there'll be like, this is the TV show that's about zombies, but in ancient Japan and also an alternate planet. Like,
Yeah.
like there's like, every show is 10 things, or it's IP, which I guess in that way it's the same as movies.
Sure. Well, that's another thing too that happened over this last decade. And again, this stuff really did happen this decade. It's an interesting decade to talk about because this has been the biggest change I think for television since God, like I don't know, like the '70s or something. But the another big thing is TV becoming more and more like movies, which I I don't particularly agree with that it's anywhere near as good as movies. But I know that for most people TV is basically just more movies, and
Yeah.
and that I mean, what was there? The Sopranos and maybe a couple other shows, but
Yeah.
now that's every show. It's
I think if
almost
you
every
look back
show.
at what was considered sort of that like early prestige TV when before that word was even a thing,
Yeah.
where almost everything now with any decent budget, every channel has a quote unquote prestige show, and they all sort of melt into each other. They're
Mm,
not that unique. They use the same color palettes, and yeah, they evoke the same things, but like there's so much of them. There's so many of them, and then you throw in all the streaming services too. But like if you look at a show that was really groundbreaking, like I don't know, did you ever watch Oz?
I never did, but yeah, I mean, I know that it's supposed to be amazing.
Yeah, it was. I mean, like to watch it now, it's a little hokey and corny because they hadn't really figured out the algorithm of how to make those. I don't know how to even put them. They're like these sort of Damon Lindelof approved style,
Mm,
like Tony shows. They hadn't figured out how to make that The Leftovers yet, and the closest thing that was around was The Sopranos, and so that was the most critically acclaimed television, and now you watch it today and it's a little shoddy and a little hokey. The first couple of seasons of The Wire actually kind of look bad, which is the worst thing you'll ever get me to say about The Wire.
right.
But
Yeah.
like these two seasons that were, I guess, produced in like 2002, 2003 of The Wire, compare them to just like a run of the mill Stars show, and that show today looks a lot better.
Right.
It could never match its narrative depth or like everything else about it, but
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I would say the other question I wanted to talk to you about is on the topic of like those tropes. Like what's finished? And this might even be able to extend for you to movies. Like I wanted to talk about the way that things have fallen out of style or like no longer in vogue. Maybe some of it has to do with like wokeness or just generally like more awareness of of other perspectives, and maybe just some humor has turned passe. This is a topic that we talk about all the time.
Sure.
The one that I would say is like the the lone problematic man, and everybody has to like learn to live with him. I don't know how many more times you can tell that story. How many more Walter? I've already seen the story of Walter White. I've already seen the story of Tony Soprano. I don't know if I really care about the dime store versions of all of them. I don't know. What do you think?
Well,
what are
yeah,
some tired tropes that you have had enough of?
I was thinking about this question, and to be honest, like I kind of don't think anything is finished, and that is partially because of like what I was just saying about the sheer amount of content. There's still going to continue to be basically everything. I mean, I almost would have said like the extreme like shock comedy of the early 2000s, the I guess like the Man Show and shit like that,
Yeah,
like a lot of
yeah,
Comedy
that's fucking done.
Central. That's basically done, but it's not completely
That's more of
gone.
a format, but yeah, I guess it's also the content itself.
Right, the content itself is like kind of a thing, and I mean, it still kind of lives on. There's still a Comedy Central roast every year. There's still, I mean, I think Tosh Point oh is still on the air. Is it? I
God
mean,
damn, is that show
somebody,
still kicking around?
yeah, somebody watches it.
I bet you that didn't we have a joke where we talked about how there's probably still like 1.5 million people out there that just watch that every week.
Yeah, I mean, there's still an audience for it, so it's still getting made. And yeah, it has definitely diminished, but I don't think anything has fully gone away. I was almost going to say sitcoms at one point, but they've fallen out of favor, but they're still there. They're still getting
Honestly,
made.
if it wasn't for, and we'll mention this show later, but if it wasn't for in the last 3 or 4 years, if it wasn't for BoJack Horseman, I would say animation, like grown-up animated shows.
Certainly,
I know
for
a lot
me.
of people shit on BoJack Horseman, but I'm entertained by it. I think it's smart enough.
Still haven't
It's
given
not
it a
as smart
chance.
as everybody pretends it is, and it's funny. It's funny enough. It's got good parts, and the absurdity
I
is
saw
great.
it was just given the #1 spot on a list somewhere. I forget what it was, like maybe Variety, the best TV shows, and I was like, what?
It's good.
Really?
It's good, and honestly, for this decade, I can't think of another good animated show that came out that I would really say is like up there with that. I mean,
Right.
there was a whole slew of like fine animated shows at the beginning of the decade when Adult Swim was still trying to make stuff, and
Yeah.
before they just started replaying everything was Fox original shows. Anyway, I would say I would say that BoJack Horseman is like the other thing that's maybe preventing me from saying that animated movies are done. Animation might be done. That whole kick from like I don't know 89 up until what did The Simpsons come out 89 up
Yeah.
until like 2008 2009. When did people stop watching Family Guy?
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say once Bill Hader got into South Park, which I mean, I know we all love Barry, but
Yeah, I know.
I do
Something
I do
happened there.
mark Bill Hader's addition into the South Park writing staff as the beginning of the end for that show. But,
Wasn't it right when they did that documentary, the 24-hour documentary?
yeah, I think so. I think that was exactly around the
Because he
same
was
time.
in that. I remember and thinking like, oh, that guy from Saturday Night Live is in this. And anyway, let's jump into the categories. Before
Sure.
we get into our top 10, I wanted to do some quick like lightning round shit
Yeah.
and go through a few just categories generally that like demarcate shows that maybe didn't make it into our top 10.
Sure.
So why don't we start with a category that I called, and I'm gonna have you start, Dave, if that's
Sure.
okay, if you're prepared, or
Yes.
I don't know if you're still writing your list or not.
No,
Um,
I'm ready.
So the first one is called The Abandoned, and these are those shows that start out really strong, but for one reason or another, they just sort of lose your attention.
Yeah.
And I think that there was a lot with that glut of content you were talking about. There was a lot of that in this
Yeah,
decade.
absolutely. And I'm just gonna say for mine, I'm gonna, like you said, lightning round. I'm gonna go through all of them at once
Yeah.
because they all share a running theme.
I bet I know
And
what it is. Can I guess? Can I guess what it is?
guess the theme.
Streaming service. Streaming channels.
Specific streaming service.
No, Netflix. Oh, just
Yes,
Netflix.
100%
That's okay.
Netflix.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah, Orange is the New Black, Stranger Things, Ozark, Glow, and the OA. All
Yeah.
shows that I loved at first, and yeah, I don't know if I'll ever get back to them. You know,
Well, you know, you're only hurting yourself by not finishing the OA. The OA was
oh,
an
I
incredible show.
want to. I loved the first season. It was so good. You know,
For me, mine are House of Cards. Again, I'm kind of in line with you for a few of them. Like a lot of my shows were Netflix or streaming shows. House of Cards, Orange is the New Black. Well, actually, just a couple. It was House of Cards and Orange is the New Black. The others are Rick and Morty. I've kind of fallen off the whole Rick and Morty thing. I liked that at first, and you know, I don't know. Maybe it's the fandom that kind of turns me off.
yeah, we've talked about that on Bird Row before about how awful the fans are.
It's just like it's like Fight Club.
Yeah.
It's something I love, and every single other person that loves it, I hate them. Showtime's this kind of passed under the radar, and it was a show that maybe is again an example of a show that 15 years ago, if I told you that there was going to be a 30-minute comedy on Showtime starring Jim Carrey, produced by what's his name, the French guy, Michel Gondry. It would be like, what the fuck? Oh my god, that's appointment viewing. But this show, kidding, I watched about six episodes of it. I think it came back for a second season. Didn't finish the first season.
I forgot so much about that show that I forgot to include it on the shows I wanted to watch and didn't get to. Like, that's how much I forgot that show existed.
It just
and
flew
I
under
wanted
the radar.
I wanted to watch it so bad. You know, a freaking Eternal Sunshine reunion. Of course, I wanted to watch it. But
likewise, 15 years ago or 10 years ago, let's say 10 years ago, because it's a good helpful demarcation for the decade. If you had told me like, oh, FX is going to make an incredible, well-written, fact-based version of The Wire, but in LA, I would be like, I'm in. But I watched almost the first season of Snowfall on FX. Haven't finished any of it, and I think they're like 4 seasons into that show. I'm probably never gonna watch that again.
Yeah.
And then a show that started out truly, the last one that I have is a show that started out truly incredible. One of the best seasons of television I've ever seen, Preacher, and on AMC. And that show just lost me in the second season, and it did not get me back in the third season.
I heard it's great, but yeah,
it's
I've
the
never
first
seen it at
season.
all.
It's just watch the first season. That's really all that's worth it.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I just wanted to throw in that I completely abandoned during this decade is every news comedy show. Every like John Oliver, Daily Show, Colbert, which is not a thing anymore, but like even things that are like serious news, like Vice, The Circus, Bill Maher, which is not serious as comedy, The Weekly by the New York Times, all that whole thing, that whole genre. If you would have told me like, oh, that's going to be a booming thing, I would say, oh yeah, I'm going to be there for that. But specifically, just in the last 3 years, I've completely lost my taste for all of that.
Yeah, it is the last few years, and I mean it's since politics has gotten fucking insanely terrible. But but yeah, I did watch The Circus and Bill Maher like pretty nonstop, like for a while. But now I can't even get through it anymore.
Dave, our next category, real quick, we're gonna hum through them. Is the outmatched, as I call them. These are shows that are basically we were aware of them. They looked great. We really wanted to get into them, but there was just no way that they were ever going to find a spot in our rotation. So what do you got?
All right. So my number one, the biggest show that I really wish I had gotten a chance to watch is Search Party.
You missed out.
Many people I love are involved in that show, and it just seems like it would be so great. Another one is Escape from Dannemora. Also the Leftovers.
Escape from Dannemora?
Is it not called Dannemora?
No, it's Dannemora.
I guess I should have.
It's a prison in upstate New York.
I was so certain that that's what it was called that I didn't even look up to make sure I spelled it right.
Just like this Escape from Dannemora.
Also the Leftovers. Barry, which I only watched like 3 episodes of, and I wouldn't really consider that an abandoned because I
go back
got
to
into
Barry.
it. Yeah,
Barry is really rewarding. So far of everything on the list, I would say go back to Barry.
Also, Mindhunter, which I watched the first episode with you while I was in Florida.
In Philly,
and,
yeah.
or
We were
in
in
Philly.
Philadelphia.
That's when we
Yeah.
watched it, and
In my
I
room,
really
my
enjoyed
suite.
that first episode, but just never got to like really get into it. And then
Incredible
one more
show.
I'll mention is I'm Dying Up Here, which I actually read that book. We know I don't read books, but I read that book,
Yeah.
and I'd love to see how they did with it.
Which is the Showtime comedy that outlines, I guess, the early days of
The Comedy
the
Store.
Comedy Store. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Which is it's close to reality. It's not exactly like the woman isn't the same. It like the woman's name isn't Pauly Shore's mom's name. They like
Right.
changed the names or something, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. For me, it's going to be a bunch of shows that I'm relatively sure you've never seen. The BBC and Netflix had a show called Top Boy, which was The Wire, but in London. Which
That sounds like
looks
a phrase that you would just say like
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah. I would love to watch this show. I probably just never will. Kevin Bacon was in a show that started this year called City on a Hill that looks incredible, which looks like sort of an extension of The Departed, kind of. It's like a Boston-based crooked cop whodunit type show.
Never even heard of it.
Looks awesome. I'm just never gonna watch it. Power. I always wanted to watch Power. It looks fun. It looks crazy. It looks maybe a little overly serious, which I like out of a show when it takes itself too seriously. It's got 50 Cent and yeah. So The Shy, which I think is also a Showtime show, and that is just about life in Chicago and living on the South Side. Better Things. Never got into that. I would have totally loved to. I think
watched one
Pamela
or two
Adlon's
episodes.
incredible.
Yeah.
Pose, I heard, is one of the best shows that's on television. And again, it's something that I'm into, which is like subculture, New York, 1980s. I'm into that all that stuff lines up for me.
Yeah.
Never saw it. And then, like, anytime, as a capstone, every once in a while someone will tell you, oh, you got to watch this. And it's on network TV. And there's just no way. I'm never going to watch another fucking thing on network TV. Every once in a while, people will be like, oh, you got to sit down and watch Community. Or you've got to watch, I don't know. I don't even know what the show, the Herbalist or something. I don't know. And it'll just be like,
That
no,
can't
I'm
be
not
a
ever,
show.
never going to watch this shit. Not in a fucking trillion years am I going to watch that.
I kind of
dumbass
wanted to
shit.
watch the two shows that were with actors from It's Always Sunny, just to see if they were any good in these other shows.
AP
but-
Bio apparently is pretty good.
Uh-huh.
AP Bio is like one of those that is lining up to have its own little quirky audience. I've heard.
Yeah.
Again, another one where people are like, "Oh, you should watch it." The Mick was I saw a few scenes of that and it was not good. It was bad. There was no writing. There wasn't any writing.
It doesn't
Like, it was
surprise
just
me.
it was just Caitlin Olsen acting out, which like she's super talented and
She's
fun
hilarious,
and funny
but-
and one of the best. But yeah. Okay. The next category is pretty self-explanatory. You hate to see it.
Yeah.
What are your hate watches, Dave?
Okay, so I kind of told you this ahead of time when we were talking. If I don't like something, I am not going to continue watching it. So I really only have one for this category, and that is The Affair, which just wrapped up its
on my list,
5-season
too.
run. And I will say that the series finale was not too bad. It wrapped it up pretty well. But season 1 was great. Season 2 was pretty good. Starting from season 3, it was just the worst horseshit show. It was every episode. It was like if you go down like the episode list, every single one of them was trying to like squeeze in this like social justice warrior stuff that was totally out of place, and like the stories would just go in these strange directions. It would, it did the whole two sides of every story thing. Since episode 1.
For like accusation, like Me Too stuff.
Yeah, but it would go into
Wow.
like characters
Bold.
that weren't even
Bold
in the
move.
show. Oh, it was crazy. It was just, it was so bad, so poorly written, so like all over the place. And we watched it right up until the very end for some reason.
So
But,
my hate watches were Girls, which was a good show, and
like
I
Girls.
just didn't like watching, but I watched all the way to the end. I have The Affair as well, which turned into a bad show, and
Mhm.
I dropped it. I didn't watch the last season.
Mhm.
Outlander, which was a great show, but it was just like it was just something like there's a lot of rape, a lot of really, really bad rape, and also like all of the characters live in like ever present, like mortal jeopardy of being raped. Like it was a show where everybody could be raped at any moment, and I just couldn't stick with that. A couple that I actually really love, Ray Donovan and Billions. I actually love these shows, but they just make me so annoyed and like these shows are so dumb. Why am I into this show? And
I wanted to watch Ray Donovan, but I never got around to it.
I can't picture a world where you would watch Ray Donovan.
No, me neither.
I could picture a world where you would watch Billions. That actually has some absurd humor that you and I would probably, at least even if it's not intentional, like we would kind of be into it. We would watch that.
Mm-hmm.
In an altered state or something. The Newsroom was unwatchable, and somehow I watched it every week. I don't know. It had to be a product of like what else was going on. Like there must have been nothing else on at that time.
Right.
And then again, another one from the like realm of like, oh, your character might be raped at any moment. The Handmaid's Tale. I just like.
Oh, that's a good one for this category. Because I watched that with Gina, and I feel kind of the same way about that one, where I'm like, I don't want to watch this show, but I still watch it week after week.
I watch it, and I'm like, oh, like a thing is like slightly going well for her, and I'm like, oh, let me guess.
Yeah.
She gets raped or beaten or
then
fucking shot.
And then she's gonna stare at the camera right until the credits roll up. Every single time.
How can you blame her? Because
same fucking thing every episode.
So on the topic of disappointment. Our next category is the Womp Womps, and those are shows that were like really big disappointments to us. What do you got?
I got nothing for this one, seriously.
Really?
Because I can't think of a single show that I started and then stopped. Like, and yeah, I mean, I just really can't think. Like, I think I knew going in, oh yeah, I'm gonna be into this show. Like,
I only have a few. One would be the show that was I think produced by and directed the first few episodes by Cameron Crowe called Roadies, which had
I think that.
Yeah. I think it was one of the Wilson brothers, and it was about roadies. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I'm dying up here. I gave that show a shot. It was dog shit. Luke Cage was a show I don't really have a lot of superhero shit on my list because there's mostly not really much good superhero shit out there. But Luke Cage was a show that I had hope for because that's a really cool character, and I actually liked that character when he was like guest starring in a lot of shit when I was a little kid into comic books, and they made him so inert, and like they made him like just this rock in the middle of the show that didn't change and was always exactly the same and was always right about everything. It was just boring. They didn't like do anything interesting with the character.
That's funny. For some reason, I thought you liked that show, but I
liked it, but I was really disappointed in it. It was like a huge disappointment.
Gotcha.
And I'm one of the few like Marvel completionists where I watched all those fucking series, and
yeah.
I kept expecting them to build up to something, and they just kind of never did.
I caught
and then
bits
Luck.
and pieces.
Luck, we've talked about before, is a show that was incredible. Like, again, if I had told you that there was like a show that was going to be, who was it? If I had told you, Michael Mann. If it was like Dustin Hoffman, Michael Mann, Dennis Farina, fucking Nick Nolte, this all-star list of people. Produced by David Milch. That's who it is. Like, if I told you that was going to be written by David Milch, if I told you that was going to be a TV show, not a movie, a TV show, everybody would lose their fucking mind.
Right.
Instead, they killed a bunch of horses at Santa Anita Racetrack and had to cancel it. And I don't know. It was okay when it was on. It was pretty good.
What a mess for that to happen.
What a disaster, too.
Oh,
what are your honorable mentions? Let's jump into our top 10, but let's hear some honorable mentions again, just rapid fire from you.
Okay, I'm gonna rapid fire because I have 10. I just wanted to.
I have a bunch too.
Them.
I'll blurt.
I won't describe them. People, if you're listening, you can just go look them up if you want to know more about them. But Boardwalk Empire, At Home with Amy Sedaris, Love, American Crime Story, both the OJ and Versace ones, Master of None, BH 90210, which I actually loved. Blunt Talk, Crashing, Broad City, and Girls.
Wait, BH 90210, Beverly Hills 90210, the show?
Yeah, it was like a one season that got canceled, but it was like
Okay, okay.
it was almost like a cross between like a Curb Your Enthusiasm, like, kind of thing with an actual new season of Beverly Hills
We should
90210.
also right now take a moment to explain our methodology, right? These are shows that are, well, as we talk about our honorable mentions and then all these previous categories and the best shows, the top 10 that we're going to get into. These are shows that are all self-contained within the 2010s.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
so
that's important. So there's no Breaking Bad on this list, on either of our
no
lists.
Always Sunny,
No, It's Always Sunny. No Curb Your Enthusiasm.
right?
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly.
It had to start in 2010 or later.
January 1st, 2010 or later had to be the
Yeah.
first episode. My honorable mentions, I'm going to go down the list as well. Workaholics and Broad City, which is kind of like a two-hander. Those shows
Sure.
used to show next to each other. They're fucking fun shows to watch. I should say my own personal methodology right now as I bring out these two shows that are super special to me, but probably would never appear on any top whatever lists of the decade. My methodology, and maybe you can say a few words about yours, are just the shows that like made me the most happy and that I was most into watching. Like
Mm.
that might seem simple, but I think that lists like these tend to get muddled up with things like, oh, this was groundbreaking, or this was the first of its kind, or this was incredibly filmed, or the writing was unbelievable. And like I'd like to think all my shows have those elements in them and whatever, all the picks that I picked. But the ultimate thing is like you look at Workaholics and Broad City. I just had fun watching those shows. They
Sure.
felt good to watch.
You enjoyed them. I am definitely not. My list is not something where I'm trying to say like these are the best television shows produced. Like I'm trying to say
Right.
these are my favorite shows. That's what it
Right.
comes down to.
Like a TV critic would probably look at my honorable mentions list and see that I have Workaholics and Broad City, but not Fleabag, and they'd be like, "Oh, you're a Philistine," and it's like,
Right.
"Yeah, maybe I am. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. I liked Fleabag. It wasn't one of my favorite shows. Like
Sure.
that's it. So still hustling right down. We mentioned BoJack Horseman already. Mr. Robot, I loved. I actually debated putting that in the top 10. Lady Dynamite, Leftovers, Halt and Catch Fire, which was probably number 11. Halt and Catch Fire is what Halt and Catch Fire was. Angry Boys, trying not to have too much recency bias. That was incredible. I see the look of confusion on your face.
I don't know what
Incredible.
the hell that is.
Incredible show. Maybe that's our next hang show. The next time we
Okay.
hang, that
Yeah.
might be our next hang show. From like I think it was 2 seasons, 2010 and 2011.
Okay.
Or 2011, 2012. Vice Principals
Mhm.
did not make my list, but is nonetheless incredible. Big Little Lies, really, really good show. I loved it.
Yeah,
Westworld,
it is.
Westworld is stupid as shit, but also really smart, and I look forward to it every week that Westworld was on. I look forward to watching Westworld. Barry, of this new world of like comedies that aren't funny but are like sad.
Right.
Like Barry might be the best one.
All right.
And High Maintenance, a show that's just really important to me that my wife introduced me to a few years ago, and I think I want to just say one thing about High Maintenance. High Maintenance might have had my favorite moment of television in the last 10 years. It was an episode that they produced right after Donald Trump won, and there was a running theme throughout the day. High Maintenance follows the guy, right? Have you seen this show or no?
No, I don't think I have.
So High Maintenance follows the guy. The guy is the main character, and he's never named. He's your guy that brings you weed in
Uh-huh.
Manhattan, and he's on a bicycle. We see these vignettes, these short, windows into these people's worlds, and the episodes are really driven by this cast of people that you never see again. It's not rotating because they're gone. Like the only commonality is the guy. And there was one and you meet his entire social circle. He's a pot dealer, so he knows a lot of people. And it's a brilliant show. It started out as a web series, and I think it was acquired by HBO at some point.
Mhm.
Anyway, one of the HBO episodes was after Donald Trump won, and it was the least treacly and cheesy and indignant like liberal type response. It was it followed a character during this show who was an immigrant himself and had all these concerns and like was most at risk for what had just happened. And the interesting thing that they did was they never came out and said during the episode what happened. People were just in this stunned state of shock through the whole episode. Like, can you believe it? Can you believe this happened? And you just knew what they were talking about because it was Manhattan and they were all acting so, ridiculous. And it was a dour, sad episode. And at the end of the episode, the guy is with, I think it's his little brother, or maybe it's his son. I'm not sure. And they're on a train, and you followed them for the day and seeing like how they live, how poor people have to live and their existence. And this long train late at night that he has to take with this kid out to, probably the edge of Queens or like Long Island City or some shit like that.
Right.
And the kid is just dancing and singing and
Tú te llamas Puku Chiku Pum. Toma un poquito. ¿Quieres más? Tú te llamas Pica Poche. Oye, espera.
I don't know. It was just this like really moving, touching scene. It was the best thing I saw on TV.
That's for you. Take it. Ah, mira, se fue. Ay, agárralo, que se va.
So-
It sounds like a good show.
Oh, dile gracias.
Great show. Totally recommend. Totally. Let's jump in.
Yeah, let's do it.
Why don't you go? Why don't
our
you start
top
with your
10?
number 10 first, and
All
then I'll
right.
jump into my number 10.
All right. So number 10, I don't remember if you watched this or not, but it was a show on Showtime created by David Crane. It was Episodes with Matthew LeBlanc. Which,
I love that show.
yeah,
Great show.
I loved it, and it was maybe the most surprising thing of the decade. I mean, I would never have expected that to work as well as it did. I don't think anybody really did. And it was just such a great mix of comedy. Of course, the whole Curb Your Enthusiasm style, method of bringing a real life personality into the show, but with a little bit of a heightened thing. And I just think
Yeah,
it
he
did it
was like
such a
dialed
great
up.
way.
It was Matt LeBlanc like dialed up.
Yeah,
to
he's
what
everything
what
you
you
expect of him.
imagine in your head.
Yeah.
The fictional Matt LeBlanc is like. Yeah.
Yeah, and it did a really great job of as much as he is such an asshole, and the main characters are such kind of assholes as well. But you kind of wanted everybody so badly to get what they wanted, and for everything to work out for everybody. And it really, I mean, it's great that it made it. It's full 5 seasons. It had like a really great full story arc. It didn't go too long, and it wasn't cut off too short.
That's a really good pick.
Right on.
My wife and I watched that show. I mean, going back to before she was my wife, or before we had a kid, for sure.
Yeah.
We love that show. My number 10 is an Amazon series called Catastrophe, starring Rob Delaney, Sharon Horgan. It ran from 2015 to 2019, like Episodes. A really smart, funny comedy that also ended on its own terms. It was 4 seasons long. It told a story of Rob Delaney's character on a work trip in London getting this, British woman pregnant.
Hey, so great to hear from you.
I'm pregnant.
I don't understand.
We had sex about 25 times in a week and you wore a condom maybe twice.
Why did you let me do that?
And then what comes next? Like, they just had this week-long fling, gets her pregnant, and then what comes next is their life. And Rob Delaney has inserted a lot. One of my favorite celebrities, by the way, Rob Delaney, and he.
Yeah, he's great.
I think a lot of people will know him as who listen to the show and don't know who Rob Delaney is. Will probably know him as Peter from Deadpool 2.
Right. Yeah.
But he's just a hilarious comedian and a great comedic actor. And he was also he and Sharon Horgan also wrote the show, which I think some people might not know. It was this like kind of the height of that like comedy with notes of drama, but also like hyper realistic. There was a lot of his own story in there, being a recovering alcoholic, having actually moved to the UK. It was just a great show, and really light. I think 25 or 26 episodes of television, BBC style, 28 minutes apiece.
Yeah, I hadn't actually heard of it, but aside from you talking about it a couple of times, but it sounds great, and I do love Rob Delaney, so
Yeah, Rob
should
Delaney's
check it out.
hilarious. Who's your 9, Dave?
Number 9 is something you had in your honorable mentions. It is Lady Dynamite. The
Oh, great show.
Netflix series is just absolutely one of the craziest things I've ever seen. Created by Mitchell Hurwitz and starring Maria Bamford, and again as a heightened version, but an extremely heightened version of herself. It is a shame
That this
this one
show
was
is
cut
made.
short.
That this show can get made.
Yeah,
should
I know.
say, even though it only lasted a few years, it should say enough about like what a golden age for television it is. Like, yeah, a lot of garbage gets through, but there would never have been a world where this show could get made.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely best case scenario would have been in the early 90s on MTV or something like that.
Right,
But
right.
yeah, but this was definitely the craziest thing I think I've seen all year, or well, all decade. I mean, and some of the supporting cast, Fred Melamed, I mean, it's some of the funniest things.
He's great.
He's so fucking good. But Maria Bamford, I've always loved as a stand-up, and it's great that she got a chance, even though it was only 2 seasons, to do this show.
So my number 9 is a show that nobody saw, and it is a very underground. I think still available out there. You can find it on HBO Digitals. It didn't actually air on television. It only aired on HBO Digital platform.
Oh, I think I
which
know what
was-
this is going to be. You showed it to me.
This is a show called The Boring Life of Jacqueline.
Yeah, you showed me a few episodes of this, didn't you?
This
Yeah.
is one of the most subversive and hilarious and real shows that's ever been made. They're only about 20 minutes apiece, I think. There was only one season. It ran in 2012, but it was very much this like proto version of what would become this like the girl in the city, but girls can also be pieces of shit too genre. Which we talk about like Broad City and Girls, but that became like a big thing. It was sort of like an empowerment thing, but there's nothing empowered about this character.
Right.
Jacqueline, who's played by the actress's name is Jacqueline Jonet, who hasn't really gone on to do very much since this show, unfortunately, but is incredibly hilarious. Michael Cera is in the show. Some other lesser known actors. It was produced and written, I believe, by Mike White, who
really?
would go on to create a show that was much more popular, but you could tell that this was sort of his sketch for that show. That show was Enlightened on HBO, starring Laura Dern, which is a great show.
I should have put that in my honorable mentions, actually. That was great.
Yeah, Enlightened with Laura Dern came out a couple years later, I think, and you can see what he was trying to do. Mike White is a guy who I think I mean, I'm not a woman, but he seems to understand women incredibly well. He puts women at the center of a lot of what he writes. Look at this run for Mike White, by the way. Mike White, hardly ever talked about, but starting in like 1999 for like the kind of shit that you and I like. Dead Man on Campus, Orange County, The Good Girl, School of Rock, Nacho Libre, and Year of the Dog. That's a fucking murderer's row, dude.
Hell
that guy
yeah.
is prolific as hell.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Such an oddball.
If you liked any of that stuff, or if you liked any of that genre that emerged after 2012 of like, you know, we're girls, but we can also fart, and also we're kind of fucked up, but you know, but that's funny. If you like any of that, if you want to see the best version of it, check out The Boring Life of Jacqueline on whatever HBO Digital, wherever you can find that.
Yeah, that show was great. I actually completely forgot about that. You showed it to me one of the last times you were in Vegas.
You were dying. I'm sure you were
Yeah.
laughing your ass off.
It was great. It was really funny. So I will go to my number 8, which is something I'm guessing is probably on your list as well, and that is HBO's True Detective.
Oh my God, True Detective is my number 8.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, all 3 seasons. I know a lot of people really hated season 2.
Let's talk
but-
about this. We're both.
yeah.
We got a little bit of time. We can air it out a little bit here. We
Yeah.
both have number 8 as True Detective. So like,
Yeah.
let's jump in. Season 1 we all agree on. Season 3 we all agree on. Let's talk about The Elephant in the Room season 2.
Yes. It's fantastic, man. I mean,
I thought it was great.
Vince
it was LA
Vaughn's
Noir.
his
it was
best
over the
performance
top.
ever. Yeah,
Yeah.
and Taylor Kitsch, amazing. And of course, freaking Colin Farrell. I mean, seriously, everybody at the top of their game, and a really interesting story that you just really had no fucking clue where it was going to go. And I mean, there's no way you could watch that show, that season, week after week, having any clue what was going to happen. And I mean, that's
Was
what you
some of
want
it-
that show to be.
Was some of it incoherent? Sure.
Maybe.
Did some things like never get called back to? Yeah, for sure. Was some of the writing a little stilted, and was Colin Farrell particularly the fucking lines they gave this poor guy to read?
You like to bully kids? Ass, pen.
Hold on, what is this?
You 12 years old and you're already evil as fuck.
Hey, you can't talk.
Stop? How about that got you off, kid? Seeing people in pain. If you ever bully or hurt anybody again, I'll come back and butt fuck your father with your mom's headless corpse on this goddamn lawn. 12 years old, my ass. Fuck you.
Colin Farrell. I love Colin Farrell in this show. I mean, I seriously, that's when I fell in love with him. He's one of my favorite
I
actors
always
because he's
think about-
such a weirdo.
There's a
But-
scene where he bought his son, the fat little boy that just disappears halfway through the series.
Yeah.
And then he leaves the voicemail for, spoilers for season 2 of True Detective, I guess. Leaves the voicemail for, but it never goes through where to believe. But there's a scene where his like dweeby son is being bullied, and he's questioning his son, like, what happened? Like, what did they do?
What happened to your shoes?
There was a little thing happened last week. Boys.
What happened? What happened to your shoes?
Ray, goddammit. They took his shoes out of his gym locker.
And what? What, shit on them?
They cut him up. That's it. Crazy.
Did they shit in them? The kid looks at him like, what? Why would that be a thing that happened? It was hilarious.
So weird.
Enough said
fucking
about
weird.
season 2. I honestly, my theory about season 2 and like why it was less perfect and more rough around the edges and messy and a little incoherent is that I truly do believe that this guy Pizzolatto, the creator, the showrunner, in a lot of cases the director, one of these guys that takes on probably too much, took on too much, and
Right.
he lost the incredible talent of the director from season 1, whose name was what, Dave?
Cary Fukunaga.
Cary Fukunaga, yeah.
Yeah.
And tried to really impose himself on every element of the show, and probably, I mean, I think you can tell by the story that he wore himself, he spread himself too thin,
Right.
but it still turned out so fun and Tony. It was that LA Noir that I really love. It was part heat, which, you know, whatever.
Yeah, that's the thing. Anything it's missing story wise, it makes up for with tone and performances. You know,
Yeah,
everybody
absolutely.
in it is so good, and the tone is so perfectly spot on.
And drone shots.
Yeah.
So seasons 1 and 3, what can you say?
Yeah,
Instant
I mean,
classics.
come on.
Season 3 came out this year. Season 1 came out way back in 2013, and all three incredible.
Here's a quick question before we move on. If it had stopped with season 1, do you think it would be higher in our lists?
No,
No.
it
'Cause
might not be on
season
my
1
list.
on its own is
Without
like,
season 3, without season 2 held its ground.
yeah.
Season 3 put it on my list.
Okay.
Without the season 3, it's not on my list. It's
Okay.
it's too good. That was
Yeah,
too
I
good.
love all three of them. I mean, I think season 3 is fantastic, but season 1 is like such a monumental thing within this decade. But you know, that's the only reason why I ask.
All right, so we both hit our number 8. You go to your number 7 then, my friend.
Sure. Number 7 is Fargo on FX, which and
Fargo
this
is Fargo is number 4 on my list.
okay, but
So, let's talk
which
about
is
it.
it's so weird for it to even be on my top 10 because I still haven't seen season 1. I actually bought it and I haven't watched
That's
it. But
ridiculous.
I know, but of course this is a anthology
An anthology
series.
But
But
that does have connections. It is in
yeah,
the same
right.
world.
There are connections, and there's definitely things for me to find out from that. And when I finally do get around to watching season 1, I'm going to go back and rewatch 2 and 3. But 2 and 3 on their own, though, especially being the anthology that is, are 2 of the best seasons of television to me of the decade. And Fargo as a property, I mean, it's absolutely insane that it works. That it's that you would take the classic Coen Brothers movie and create a TV show in that world and with that tone and that just styling, and for it to actually be worthwhile, I mean, it says a lot about what Noah Hawley's been able to accomplish with this thing.
We're going to get to, I think there's another show that is like this that we probably both have our list a little further down. I'll be surprised if I'm the only one with it, but Fargo is in this category of shows that, again, it shows the strength of this decade of television where they've reinvented the way things are done, where I call the category, there's no way that's going to work, and then it does. Like, there's no way that you can tell me you're going to greenlight a television show based off of this movie and that it's gonna be good. It's gonna be so disappointing. There's just no way it won't be. And then season 1 comes out, incredible. Season 2 comes out, one of the best seasons of television ever made.
Yeah.
And season 3 comes out and is almost as good.
Yeah.
And is just killer. And I have it further down on my list. Number 4, it's got a great revolving cast. It has a great progressing cast where some characters who are in their 20s or 30s in one season are in their 60s or 70s in the next season. Great callbacks. Thematically, what they talk about, like the concepts of the way that they deal with mortality and with like the sort of absurd fleetingness of life and the different messages that Noah Hawley's trying to convey, I think hit on this really profound level and make you, I mean, it's more than just saying like, oh, it's deep. It's like there's a philosophy behind this show.
Yeah.
And in the same way that there's a philosophy, no matter how much they say that there isn't, there's a philosophy about the world, a through line in all the Coen Brothers work.
Yeah, I was about to say there's books about the philosophy of the Coen Brothers, and so it is surprising, but at the same time, it shouldn't be surprising that the show taps into some of that,
So my number 7 show is Game of Thrones, which is the most basic bitch shit that anybody has on their list.
I was wondering if I didn't stop to look it up, but if this had started before 2010. So this was after 2010?
2011.
Oh, wow.
2011,
Okay.
Season 1, which notoriously problematic, or not problematic, that's the wrong word, notoriously troubled. Season 1 almost didn't happen. The pilot almost didn't happen. People will remember that Game of Thrones was like almost canceled on the block because the pilot it was like one of those things I've heard it described where like the pilot was just like 15 degrees off to the left and it just wasn't right. And they made them go back, do very expensive reshoots. Everything on that show was expensive, and that was before it had a budget. And I mean, like, you had to be filming in 3 or 4 different places and this enormous cast. And anyway, it was one of the shows that, and a million people have said this before me, but it is one of the last examples of monoculture, probably ever.
Right.
There will not be another thing that we all watch on. Think about how sad that is.
I know.
There's never going to be another thing that we all watch on Sunday, and the next day we're talking about it with each other. It's never going to be that way.
I know. I was actually just thinking the other day about how great it was during Boardwalk Empire. Like that was the last time for me because I didn't watch Game of Thrones, but
and that show had a tenth of the viewership.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I'm
Game
sure.
of Thrones.
But it seemed like everybody was talking about what happens the night before every Monday. Even so.
Yeah,
But,
and also Game of Thrones starting in 2011 and extending into 2019 was one of the animating forces sort of bridging the pre and post streaming era. Like when when Game of Thrones came out in 2011, if you missed a showing at 9:00, you were pretty much in a situation where you had to wait. Some people I think had on demand or whatever. Like I had Xfinity at the time, and we had an on demand service that was like very unreliable and it didn't really work that well. But it was not the world of streaming yet, of HBO Go and HBO Max or whatever,
Right.
and all the other streaming services. So if you missed the show at 9 o'clock, like you were fucked because your friends were going to be talking about it the next day, and you weren't going to be. And what's funny is that Game of Thrones, I don't think it really hit that gear until 2013. It wasn't that ubiquitous show until the Red Wedding season and episode specifically. But yeah, so I don't imagine Game of Thrones is on your list. You didn't watch that show.
No, I never got into it. The truth of the matter is that the first 3 Lord of the Rings films really just wore me out when it comes to medieval, action of that, that kind of style. And I haven't really gotten into anything that is like that since.
Yeah.
So
I don't know what else there is to say about Game of Thrones. I mean, it was just a cultural monolith and
Yeah,
the
it was
last of
huge.
its kind. And
no question.
for a lot of time that it was on, it was the best thing that ever was on television. For a lot of those episodes were like there won't be a height surpassed of the writing and just the concept of like people talking in a room being elevated like that. That's the difference with great television versus great movies. Great movies will never rely on that 2 or 3 people talking, having a conversation in a room that changes everything and moves everything. And that was this incredible power that Game of Thrones had. And the writing was unsurpassed because of the source material that they were pulling from. Of course, as they passed the source material, the writing nosedived and became just dog shit. And I don't remember. I always try to joke around. I don't remember what the season was exactly where they passed George R.R. Martin's books. I think it was either season 6 or something like that, or 5 or 6. But everybody was saying like, oh, well, season premiere, let's see what they do now that they've passed the source material. And there was a line where Tyrion said something like, I don't think so, bitch, or some shit like that. And it was just like, okay, yeah, they're not going to be putting a lot of money into the writing. The writing is going to be bad.
No.
I was just like, okay, this is what this is going to be. I guess we're just going to figure out what these dragons can do. And that was like, it stopped being like a morality tale and an exploration of identity. And it stopped being this like multi-layered, like really, really tasty thing that you could sink your teeth into on all these different levels. And it became just like, what are the dragons going to do this week? And that's fun too. Like, what are the dragons going to do? I want to see, So what's your number 6, Dave?
Number 6. So this is a show that just came back like a week or 2 ago, and I haven't started the new season, but it is HBO's Silicon Valley.
All right.
Of course, we've talked.
I
about
love
this
Silicon
show
Valley.
a lot.
Not on my list.
Not on your list. Okay.
No.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just so funny, so smart, and while some of the last couple seasons have definitely the quality's gone a little up, a little down over the last I don't know, 2 seasons, I'd say. Those first few seasons, I mean, were just freaking on fire. It was every week was so freaking funny. The main cast as well as all the little side characters, everybody's great. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how this is the final season, I believe. I hope they wrap it up well. So hopefully
I got to catch up on last
out.
week's episode. I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen any of it. Actually, I think I still have the season finale of last season that I haven't watched, so I got to catch that first. But
We're all over the map on like what's an abandoned show versus a top 10 show. Like
I know, but I don't think that counts as abandoned. That just means that I'm
You just haven't gotten to it yet.
I'm 9 months late. That's all.
As we get to to entry number 6 for me, at least, I just want to draw a line of like demarcation where like these shows now are shows that are super special to me, that I think are like really, really good and just were super powerful.
Yeah.
And show number 6 for me, like there's a line there. Like I'm looking at my top 10, and these 4 shows that I talked about before are all really, really good shows that I really loved. Good enough to be my top 10. But this top 6 are like where you really get into the stuff that affected me.
Sure.
So number 6 for me is a show that was called Lodge 49. And this show was canceled. It was on AMC in 2018 and 2019. An actual real mystery show. A drama, a comedy, all those elements. Funny, clever, like kind of a mystery box show where you, like it's also a show where like you don't know what little things are and what these Easter eggs mean, and you try to figure out how to fit things together. But it was also a mystery, like an old school style mystery. But it was also a show that handled the concept of philosophy, like just the way that you think about the world and the way that you interact with other people who think differently about the world, better than a billion other shows that have tried to just like surround that same real estate. Lodge 49, if I were to summarize it, it was just a show about a character named Dud, who was played by Kurt Russell's son. Yeah, Wyatt Russell, who I don't know where people would know Wyatt Russell from. He's been in a lot of stuff. He was in Bridget Goes West. I don't know if you ever saw that or not.
No.
I'm sorry, not Bridget. Ingrid Goes West.
Oh, he was in Oh yeah. Oh, I know Wyatt Russell, absolutely. Yeah, and he was in Overlord, which he was great in that.
He was in, I think other people might remember him from an episode of Black Mirror that was, I think, the one that came out in like 2016. He
was also in Everybody Wants Some. Yeah.
Yeah, he was in Everybody Wants Some. Yeah. So great, incredible performance by him over the course of 2 seasons, where he played Dud, this sort of wounded, metaphorically and also literally wounded, wandering beach bum who was just sort of trying to figure out life and taking life as it came, who stumbled upon this lodge that was like I think a lot of people thought that it was supposed to be like something that was darker, more sinister, like a secret society type lodge. It wasn't. It was one of these more like traditional lodges that is like a God, I don't even know what the real words for them, what the real versions of them are. I guess Lions Club or Knights of Columbus type shit, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And he stumbles on it. He's by far like one of the younger people to get involved because in the lodge, because it's mostly older men and some women that are involved in it. And their quest to save this lodge in Long Beach, California, turns into this deep mystery about the machinations of like a secret society that's running the world. And it's just tender and it's smart and it's fun, and I looked forward to it every week. AMC canceled it, unfortunately, right when it was getting really, really, really fucking good. But number 6 for me is Lodge 49, and I urge everybody, even though it got canceled, totally worth it. Go watch that show.
Right on. Well, I will go to my number 5, which I have a feeling is going to be on your list somewhere, and that is Donald Glover and Company in Atlanta.
Yeah.
On FX. Honestly, 2 of the best seasons of television of the decade. Every episode, just so many just groundbreaking episodes. Where I mean, some of
like,
what
where
they
do you start? There's so much.
I know. Like, we could seriously talk for an hour about some of our favorite episodes. Like, we
could talk for an hour about just like Teddy Perkins. We could talk for an hour about
seriously.
I could talk for an hour about the scene in a restaurant or in a fast food restaurant where they say that he can't have the kids' meal because that's a real thing.
Yeah.
And being broke, you learn those things. Like, that's a real thing, that somebody who wrote that was broke at one point. Like, that's a real, like, incredible. Atlanta is number 2 on my list. So
right on.
Let's chop it up. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, first of all, Donald Glover, of course, was already well known for his music, at least, within the hip hop community. But I mean, such a talent.
Millions and millions more people knew him from the Community show, though. That was like one of the most popular shows.
I always forget he was on that. Yeah. So I guess he was known for a lot of things then, but
pretty well.
But
known.
I mean, I
who wasn't known was Brian Tyree Henry, who is now like
he is huge. He's
the biggest star in Hollywood now. Apparently, he's like in every movie.
Absolutely. Also, Zsa Zsa Beetz. So in so much stuff now.
Lakeith Stanfield.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And one of the fellow writers who's starting to get like more. He's not really doesn't really get more parts. Is the guy who actually plays Clark County.
Yo, look at this dude. This Clark County dude, he making money, man.
Hey, I flex on the bitch like I just got a chat like haters gonna hate like until they see me in the face and they all like sorry baby mama like and then it's in a home with a good night bars in his hands like good night and we drink Yoo-hoo like it's dirty Sprite. Yeah.
I hate this shit.
He's one of the creators and writers, and apparently he's a partner of he's like one of I wish I could remember his name off the top of my head, but I can't. He's one of the like key core writers. He's like the what's his name from the Eastbound universe of the Jody Hill. Yeah, it's like you never really see him, but he's like one of the key people that he apparently is I could talk for an hour about the scene with the producer where he like he basically tells them who is it, Brian Tyree Henry's character and Lakeith Stanfield that they have to leave because they're gonna basically kill the producer that fucked up the recording and didn't arm the tracks.
there's too much to even go into specific scenes.
Teddy
There's
Perkins. I mean, like, there's so much shit happening.
Every song that is written for the show is.
I will
amazing.
say that my favorite thing about Atlanta is in an era where I don't want to spoil any other shows that are on either of our lists, but there was an era that was tipped off by one specifically groundbreaking show that turned into a genre of complicated funny men who everything bounced off of them, and there was this like internality about like everything the way that they interacted with the world, and the assumption was that the show would be funny, and the shows were funny. But they also were like complicated and dark and sad in some ways. Atlanta was different and subverted that. It was the next in line in that, and it also literally in terms of time slot on the network that it was on. It was literally like the next in line of that type of show, but Donald Glover chose to make it a very external show where his character, while you experience a lot through him, it was mostly things bouncing off of him around him.
Right.
And he was, I think, wise in not trying to redo that formula and to make the whole show the Donald Glover show. What's going on with his character this week? Maybe we can spend an entire week where the most we see him is on a phone call for 5 minutes and then he's not around. Mm-hmm. Maybe there's this talent that will help, a guy like Brian Tyree. Maybe Brian Tyree Henry is the kind of talent that can take entire episodes at a time and make them all about himself. Yeah. Maybe there can be really, really, really good flashback episodes, which other shows have done too. But anyway, I think Atlanta, brilliant show, number 2 on my list. So I've actually forgotten where we're at. Where are we?
Well, that was my number 5. So we're
okay. So my number 5 is yet another 2-season cancelado. Did not make it. Amazon's, again, a show that is super important to me and that I really, really like and that I'll probably rewatch every year for a long time.
The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Amazon's Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. No. Amazon's The Patriot, created by Stephen Conrad, directed mostly by Stephen Conrad, which follows the misadventures of John Tavner, who also goes by John Lakeman, who is a intelligence officer that's got a lot of things going wrong for him and is perpetually exhausted and is just always tired. It has some themes that really resonated with me, which were some of them included like just the propensity for things to fall apart and not work. Things just always fall apart and don't work. Things that you're being assured of by other people will be there for you. In many cases, like Tavner or Lakeman has an extraction plan or support lined up from his agency, and it just doesn't turn out to happen. Mm-hmm. This show is not, God, it sounds like I'm describing Homeland, and it's so far away from being that. It's just this quirky, weird, thoughtful, slow, quiet rumination really on intimacy and male intimacy specifically. It's about men being friends, and like yeah, it is pretty male focused. Honestly, I gotta say it is, but it's done in such a healthy and interesting and smart way, such a tender way. I really loved it. And funny, just a fucking funny show. The Patriot, yeah, that is my number 5 show, and came completely late to it. By the time I started watching it, it had already pretty much gone into the realm of cancellation. Like it was a known. It was being there were rumors flying around that it was going to be canceled by the time I binged it. My wife and I binged all of it in like a matter of a month or two, and it's just an incredible show. It's one of these shows that it's hard to describe because it's hard to know what you're watching when you're watching it. Yeah,
I honestly thought you might have it at number 1 because how you've talked about this show in the past. I know how much you love it, and
if there were 2 more seasons of The Patriot that were the same level as the 2 seasons that exist, it could be my number 1 show. I mean, don't get me wrong, the next 4 shows are great fucking TV shows that I really love. You take the next 4 TV shows and show them to a TV critic and put Patriot in with them, and it's going to be one of these things is not like the other, where it's like, what? I heard about Patriot, but I didn't even watch it. That was the big thing. Everybody was talking about how like, oh, they've heard about it, heard good things, and yeah, got to get to it. And not enough people got to it. Or I don't know. I honestly don't know how Amazon makes decisions, because Amazon Prime as a vertical has to be a fucking loss leader. There's no way they're making money on Amazon Prime Video.
Yeah.
Like that's not something they're making money on. That's just like my understanding is that the business model of Amazon Prime is supposed to be, oh, we know that you watched, 7 episodes in a row of The Patriot, so we're going to sell you action figures of The Patriot or something like that. And like that's the way that all this shit is going to work. Like with Apple, right? The Apple streaming platform, it's supposed to lead you into more hardware purchases. The Disney platform is supposed to lead you into more experiences and rides and movies. Like you're supposed to go to the next princess movie that comes out, right? And the toys and shit, right? And that's why I do think that you might get your wish one day and see Netflix get destroyed, because Netflix is only content.
Yeah.
Everything else is buoyed by a larger business model. So that all that is to say, I don't know why I don't know why Amazon Prime makes decisions like canceling a show like The Patriot. But it's a fucking injustice. It's an injustice. The show nobody was doing or writing or saying the kind of things that were being done on that show. And the themes that they were exploring, unreliability of people who you rely on, the way that you can be alone in life, no matter how much support it looks like you have, how people can be. I think my favorite theme that I think is underexplored and that is most pertinent to what's going on right now in the world, and specifically in our country, is loneliness. Yeah. And nobody talks about loneliness enough. And to have a show that explores characters who are truly lonely, but not in a 2-dimensional, easy to write kind of way. Like, oh, he's sitting on a bench and he's sad. But like really just despairingly adrift, like without anything to hold on to, and experiencing their life. And for this character, Taverner Lakeman, you see the way he goes about with this like reckless abandon in his job, this really brutal inefficiency of the way he fucks up constantly. He doesn't have enough that he's connected to. Even his like imagined utopia of like moving away with his wife is something that I think only feels like something that he thinks he's supposed to want and doesn't actually want it. So, Patriot, watch it.
All right. And you know what? Before I go to my number 4, I just want to say, I don't want Netflix to die or anything like that. But, so my number 4 is Better Call Saul, a show that had to have been a major gamble for them to take the chance to actually do something like this. Of course, there's been spin-offs in the past over the history of television, but I don't know, for a show as I guess there's been ones off of shows that beloved before, but I mean, just so soon after it ended, after Breaking Bad ended, and with a character that nobody would have really expected for the series to carry on with, and then for it to work so incredibly well. And you and I have talked about this before. I know we're kind of in the minority on this, but I truly do believe that Vince Gilligan has become a better writer, better show creator. And I mean, I think that this show is better than Breaking Bad ever was.
Better Call Saul is better than Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
Right now, 4 seasons in. I think Breaking Bad only made it 5 seasons intentionally. It's not like anybody canceled Breaking
Sure.
Bad.
Yeah.
It had 5 seasons of story to tell. I think it's on hiatus right now. Better Call Saul. I think it was like, I don't remember when the last time they did a season was. Better Call Saul is number 3 on my list.
Right on. Yeah, it's coming
yeah.
back this year. It's coming back in February, I think.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah.
Incredible. The depths of the character of Jimmy, as we've come to know him during these 4 seasons of television, surpass anything that Gilligan did on Breaking Bad.
I agree.
It surpasses the tenderness and the interesting nature of what this like uncouth kind of dirtbag lawyer, what we thought he was heading in to this series, based on what we learned about him in Breaking Bad, so much more interesting to me than the descent of Walter White. The like unmasking, I think, is the way that you would describe Walter White, because
Sure.
Walter White, I think what we were meant to believe about Breaking Bad is that Walter White was always a villain, and he was always Heisenberg. He
Right.
always was that. There was just a chemical reaction that was waiting to happen to make
Sure.
him be that. Right? Great. I'm not here. I'm not coming here to shit on Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad's
Right,
one of my
of
favorite
course.
all-time shows.
Absolutely.
Better Call Saul's better. It's a
Yeah.
better TV show. Technically, it looks better. Like, he's a better shooter now. They
Right,
found a way
right.
to make the life of this lawyer and the life of this ex-cop security guard turned henchman and the life of this this struggling woman lawyer. They found a way to make that mid-2000s trip through Albuquerque look more beautiful and more compelling. And the things that they do with the camera, the tension that they're able to build within scenes that that Vince Gilligan can do.
And
I
speaking
think-
speaking of that, the production design is so authentic and perfect
Unbelievable.
for that setting. You know, it's just
Unreal.
incredible. Yeah.
I think of some standout scenes. I mean, there are so many standout scenes in that show, but a couple come to mind. One is the way that they build like this dull tension leading up to the I think her name's Rhea Seehorn. Her character Kim. The way that she has a car accident at one point, and the way that they build in that scene to her actually kind of falling asleep at the wheel and causing this wreck is so deftly done. Like, it's so well done. And it's just like, it's not shock, and it's not like a lot of car crashes on TV or movies are like rely on just suddenness, right? And this is not that. It's like there's a gradualness to it that is incredible. And then there's a scene where after the death of his brother, Chuck, Jimmy is put in charge, is one of the several executors of a charity, basically, like to recognize or to empower, give a scholarship to upcoming law students. And he goes through this with other lawyers who are far more successful and have better pedigrees than him in this law firm. He goes through this vetting process with a bunch of candidates, and we see a sort of a montage of all the candidates, right? Do you remember the scene I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, and then there's a scene afterwards where they're all very well qualified, but one comes from like a lower socioeconomic background. She got in trouble when she was young. These are all like 18-year-old kids, and this one got in trouble when she was 14 for shoplifting, but then went on to have all A's and B's. And Jimmy makes the plea for her to be the one that gets the award because she's the one that can do the most with it. Because I think he sees himself, we're led to believe, it's clearly shown that he sees himself in her. And because he's a bit of a ne'er-do-well, kind of a scumbag. And she doesn't get it. And he catches her out on the sidewalk. And the scene that I'm trying to share here is him, that I'm giving context for, is him just kind of grabbing her by the shoulders and telling her,
"You were never gonna get it. They're not gonna give it to you? So what? You're gonna take it, and you are gonna win. And the higher you rise, the more they're gonna hate you. Good."
you have to understand, the people in that room are never going to accept you, and they're
Right.
never going to let you in. But you know what? Fuck them, because we're better than them, and we're
Yes.
smarter than them, and we're going to take all their money. And
Did you cheer when that happened?
Yes, I was like, fuck yeah. Oh my God, that was one of my favorite scenes of television of all time. It was so good. It was so moving. And the girl, I don't know who she is, young actress who's like
Yeah.
supposed to be 16, 18 years old. You see her like go from, why is this creepy old guy bothering me? And then kind of like, what is he talking about? And then acceptance, and then like nodding her head in agreement, like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
He sells her. He
Yeah.
sells her in that moment.
You know,
And then-
one last thing about the show before we move on to the next one. But you know, the both of us coming from a background of just sitting around drinking and watching alt comedy all day, you know, during our 20s, how great is it for Bob Odenkirk to get
Incredible.
the chance to do
Incredible
something
that Bob
like this?
Odenkirk is like this well-respected. He also had a TV show that came out this year called Undone that I don't think you got a chance to see.
I did not, but I heard about it.
Incredible TV show, and it's so funny because he's still funny.
Yeah.
And he's still like quirky and zany or whatever.
He's been in some movies too. He was in that Spielberg
movies.
movie. Yeah. He's great. He's great, and I love that he's getting this like second act as a good actor that gets to be still funny a little bit, you know?
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah, his career has it's great that his career turned into this. It's so good. And David Cross, both of them. Like I love that their careers turned into this. So yeah, what is your number 2? Because we already talked about my number 2.
Well, no, my number 3 I gotta do.
Or your number 3.
Yes.
We've talked about my number 3. That's Better Call Saul. So tell me what your number 3 is.
My number 3 then. Now, I for a little bit I was thinking about not including it because of recency bias, but I absolutely had to because it's where it belongs. It is Danny McBride and Jody Hill's The Righteous Gemstones, which is the best thing that's happened all year. We all know that movies are my thing, but this is above movies this year. This is my number one thing that's happened this year in any form of entertainment. It is just the most incredible show. It is. There are so many incredible moments. It is. I just can't
So
speak
fun.
highly enough about it.
It's a variety show. It has like dancing and singing.
Teacher said don't, but I said it anyway. Misbehaving.
Preacher said no, if you do, you're gonna pay misbehaving.
Kicking and spitting and cussing out loud.
Running through the house with a pickle in my mouth.
Like, I mean, the world building where they show you the world of this ridiculous compound and this
world building is a great phrase to use for this because there's so much. It's so rich with so much, and then of course you get the backstory episode, and which fills it in even more. And I mean, it's just so rich with character and everything is just.
It's a great show on its merit, and then you add in 2 words: Walton Goggins.
Yes.
And it just
a treasure,
or
a
3
national
words:
treasure.
Uncle Baby Billy.
Uncle Baby Billy Freeman.
There's nothing funnier that happened all year than just a character being called Uncle Baby Billy.
I would actually really love to watch a feature-length documentary of him showing up the first day to get makeup and to get turned into this character.
To get turned into Uncle Baby Billy Freeman.
Oh my God.
The show does not appear on my list, but it might be worth it for me to explain the Danny McBride, Jody Hill universe.
Mhm.
And like the important, like these guys are a victim of their own formatting on my stupid list that none of those guys are ever going to care about. But I have to explain why probably my 2 favorite creators of television in the last 10 years don't appear. Number 1, technically Eastbound and Down came out in 2009 and lasted up until 2013. It had 4
that's why
seasons.
it's not on my list.
Eastbound and Down would have been maybe number 1 on my list. It was, no show made me happier and made me laugh more than Eastbound and Down. No individual has made me laugh more than Danny McBride in this decade. If you count movies, if you count everything, I've probably laughed more at Danny McBride shit than I have at anything else.
Absolutely.
Vice Principals was incredible, but it was only 2 seasons. It was really short. And it was the least of their 3 shows. And then, the other one is only 1 season in. So, like, if I could have melded all those shows together into a show, it would have been the defining show of this decade. Right. I would say the defining comedy of this decade that nobody else has been able to figure out that Danny McBride has is the understanding of the American mind.
Oh yeah.
Of what Americans are. Of like the simultaneous stupidity and know-it-allism, the contradiction, like where Americans just think that they're the smartest person. Every one of them thinks they're the smartest, most capable person in the room, but is also just profoundly stunted and incapable and like crippled by feelings of inadequacy.
Can I just really quickly interrupt you because so here's the thing. I'm gonna break order. My number 2 is Vice Principals, and so that's why I want to actually just get that out of the way.
So let's do it.
That way, while we're having this conversation,
let's talk about the what do we call it? The Jody Hill verse, the Danny McBride verse.
Yeah, I guess so.
The extended universe of these southern, most of it happening in North or South Carolina, in the Carolinas, where I think Danny McBride is from.
Yeah,
these 3 shows, we can kind of take them as one, right? Because they were the outgrowth, the outcropping of what we thought of as like the best comedy of this. It was the growth out of that. Like there was the mumblecore and there was the Judd Apatow shit of like all of the late 2000 aughts or whatever, and it turned. We were like, okay, well, what's this going to turn into? Because this is going to get boring and old. And that's kind of what it turned into. It turned into like Danny McBride and Jody Hill.
Yeah, well, you were just talking about like that, like the section of these just kind of like broken men, It's like white men are in a place right now where they don't know what the hell to do with themselves.
They're so fragile.
Yeah, they're fragile. These shows better than anything dig into that and that thing that's happening in the culture right now and do it in such a perfect way. And the thing about Vice Principals to me, and the reason why I put it at number 2 instead of 3, they could have almost been a tie, the 2 shows, but because it's a complete story, and I mean, they did say that they intended it to be a 2-season show, like that was the arc, and so the fact that it's a complete story is why I have it 1 step higher than
which they actually also said about Eastbound and Down.
Right, they always seem to get what they want, apparently.
Well, no, but they even said they only wanted to do 2 seasons of Eastbound and Down, and they were talked into the 3rd and the 4th.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So I mean, I guess we'll find out what happens with Gemstones. We're getting a 2nd season, and I don't know if they've actually explicitly said how long they want it to go on, but I mean, what they're saying with these shows is just, I think it's great. I think it needs to be said. And overall, it's just so fucking funny.
I will say my one thing about Gemstones is that as the season went on, I think that the comedy got better and the performances were, as they got deeper into the characters and you got to know, like you didn't even really know what Baby Billy Freeman was when you met him. But by the end of the season, you were like, oh, that's so Baby Billy. Like you knew him by then.
Absolutely, and Judy.
But I will say that my only criticism, of the show, is that they were dealing, I think, with some very big themes at the start of the season, and they had mostly abandoned them in favor of like kind of goofing around by the end of the season. They had introduced this concept of like accountability and abuse of authority and what you can believe and what a huckster is versus somebody, like confidence, like gaining confidence and mass manipulation. They had these really big ideas they were playing with that they by and large gave up on around the flashback episode. And
I feel like they
it
didn't
became
give
more of a
up.
family drama. It became more just about the family, which is fine. They were fucking hilarious. They were so good, but
I think it's always under the surface, though, even in those later episodes. And it's I definitely want to believe that it's going to be coming back to some of that stuff in the next season, because definitely they set it up and then they wanted to get into the family stuff. That is what became more important. You're absolutely right. But I think it's all going to continue to come around. You know, I think they knew ahead of time that they had the time to work on it. You know?
So I think we're at our number one shows because we've talked about everything else, right?
Yeah, because your number 2 was something I'd already said, right? What was it?
Which, if by virtue of this show not being mentioned yet, I think we both have the same number 1 show.
That would be crazy if that's what it is. I'm going to be actually very surprised.
Yeah. Okay, why don't we say it on 3? You ready?
All right.
1, 2, 3. The Tonight Show.
Kimmy Schmidt.
Wait, hang on a second. No, that can't be right. Wait, this isn't right. There's no way. Your number 1 show is Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt?
Yes.
Wait, how is that possible? Wait, how? You haven't even mentioned. I can't believe this. This is my number 1 show, and you did not mention it. The number 1 show of the decade is Louie.
Louie, first of all, came out before 2010.
Came out in 2010.
No, it didn't.
I'm doubting myself. It might have to be Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. It says 2010 here.
Oh my God, you're right.
June 29th, 2010 was the premiere. Have I blown your mind? Have I
You have blown my mind. For some reason, I thought it was 2009. Yeah, I was including it
Where
with
does
Breaking
Louie
Bad
fit?
and It's Always Sunny.
All right, let's give Kimmy Schmidt its moment in the sun. I love that show a lot. It didn't make my top 10. It probably should have been an honorable mention. I just forgot it.
Yeah.
I felt like, for me, I'll just say Kimmy Schmidt. I felt like it got just so punny and too rapid fire towards the end in the last couple.
It's perfection. It is absolutely nothing. No show made me happier this decade than Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. Titus Andromedon is the best character outside of Uncle
kinda
Baby
selling
Billy.
me. You're selling me. You're selling me right now. It did make me really happy, that show.
It's the best.
I definitely liked that show more than I liked Game of Thrones. Why is it not there?
And also, I mean, the fact, I have my issues with Netflix, but Netflix gave me 4 seasons of this show. You know what I mean? And so at least I always I'll have a love-hate relationship, I guess, with them. But yeah, Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt is my number 1 pick. But yeah, you're kind of blowing my mind right now. And also another thing before we talk
wait. Let's not leave Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt yet, because that's a great show. I probably should have had it in my top 10. Now that I think about it, it made me at least as happy as Catastrophe. Like, I loved it. It was a hilarious, fun show. Made me. I mean, like the very first episode where she's introducing herself to her new friends, and she describes herself as a mole woman. She says, "I was a mole woman who was kept underground by a psychopath for 14 years, and before you ask, yes, there was sex stuff." Like, that was such a fucked up, dark, like, what the fuck? That was like the closest I've seen to Strangers with Candy, and I mean, the show shares a lot of DNA with Strangers with Candy.
Oh yeah, for sure, absolutely. And I just wanted to say before we get on to talking about what you want to talk about with Louie, and we definitely will talk about it. But as we were going through our list, something I hadn't written down and absolutely should have been in my honorable mentions: Ash vs. Evil Dead.
Oh yeah, that should be in your
obviously the show did go downhill a little bit in the last season. We never got the ending that they intended or anything like that. But if nothing else, after 20 years, I finally got an hour in the first episode, directed by Sam Raimi, starring Bruce Campbell, of more Evil Dead. So if nothing else, it deserves its own special shout out here in our conversation on the number 1. So
my number 1 is a little show that was called Louie, that ran from 2010 to 2015. Technically, I looked it up. It's technically like Atlanta. both shows are technically on hiatus right now.
Sure. Yeah.
Are technically on hiatus right now.
Sure. Yeah.
So
That's what they
like
call it.
whatever that means. Obviously this show comes with an insane amount of baggage today.
Yes.
Louis C.K. in real life, there were shades of who he really is in the show.
Uh-huh.
He didn't really hide it. And we found out that he's kind of a really, like, not even a funny piece of shit, but a real piece of shit. And in a lot of circles, especially the circles where, like, comedy matters, like LA and New York, he's probably still a pariah. Bears noting, like, he did not break any laws, obviously,
Right.
but he was a fucking nightmare for women to have to work with. If, like, that's what women had to deal with to be around him, it's disgusting and repugnant, and he deserves all the scorn that he gets. I think you would say maybe he deserves like 95% of the scorn that he gets. So he is very much, if you were able to divorce him from, like, there are the two strains of the Me Too. There's the, like, this person should be in prison and under watch. And then there's the, like, this person is kind of a piece of shit. He is the uber text of the Me Too conversations on that side of things. He is the main avatar. Whereas Harvey Weinstein, again, I hate to put his name in with a bunch with somebody who was an actual, you know, person
rapist.
who sexually assaulted people and broke the law.
Yeah.
But on that side of the end zone, right? Where on this side you have people who broke the law, on this side you have people that didn't. People who, like, really committed assault versus people who were just real creeps and scumbags. Louis is the most prominent, I would say, of that side of it. Unlike others, I think that it's gonna stick with him. We've already seen some people who obviously Louis made an impression on and who copied Louis, like people who like Aziz Ansari, who have sort of started their rehabilitation, because again there wasn't really that much to rehabilitate. They didn't do anything illegal, but, like, they were still pieces of garbage, right? So, and, like, creepy in their own ways. So the show, though, was groundbreaking, and you can't take that away. I don't care what happens. He did things with this show that no one has done since. Very few people tried to do.
There was a moment during the final season of it where it basically could just be whatever it wanted. I think wasn't there like a 2-hour episode, and then there was a 10-minute episode. Like,
there was a
whatever.
random double episode where they just made it all flashback, and the star was Jeremy Renner just for 2 episodes. They just had Jeremy Renner be the star of the show for 2 episodes.
Oh, that was a good one.
As the guy that gave Louis his first, like, drink of liquor or something like that.
I kind of want to rewatch the show now, although I wonder how difficult it's going to be to watch, knowing
this show,
you know,
absolutely, in my opinion, it birthed the genre of a comedy that's not a comedy.
Yeah, definitely.
It's still, that genre is still having a huge moment. I talked about a lot of shows that are like that.
Well, let's be honest. Almost everything is either Breaking Bad or Louis.
Atlanta, Love, Master of None, Marin, Crashing, Baskets, Better Things, Barry,
Yeah, definitely Barry. 100%
Transparent
Barry.
in some ways. I mean, like, these shows all that I said Master of None, right? Yeah.
Yep.
These shows all, like, sort of owe something to Louis. If not for anything else, then guaranteed that all those shows, most of those shows at least, in the pitch room, the people were like, well, it's like Louis, but I'm a Pakistani kid, you know? It's like Louis, but you know, it's 3 black friends in Atlanta. It's like Louis, but
it's Pete Holmes.
Yeah, but it's Pete Holmes. And to this day, as much as I love Atlanta and a bunch of those other shows, I actually really like Master of None. Master of None does
I love Master
some
of
really
None.
incredible stuff.
It was on my honorable mention.
I think that show's, again, another one that's, like, on hiatus and is probably never coming back.
Yeah.
But Louis did it better than all of them in those 5 seasons that they gave that show. I know it's a complicated number 1 pick, but watch those 5 seasons of television and show me something that was better.
I completely agree with you completely agree with you. And yeah, I swear I thought that show was pre 2010. That's why I didn't even include it on my list. But yeah, I mean, it may very well have been at number one for me as well. I mean, definitely in the top three, you know?
I had a little wrap up that I wanted to call I don't know if you saw this or not. The Let Me Get Back to Yous, shows that are like literally just kind of starting out, and I would say like in 10 years they might be, or 5 years from now, if you do like a mid-decade break, there might be shows that I really love.
Yeah.
Some of them are pretty well known, like Succession. It's a fun ass show to watch. Righteous Gemstone.
I love the theme to Succession.
It's great. Succession, Righteous Gemstones we mentioned. Los Espookies with Fred Armisen is an incredible show.
Never seen it.
It's about 75% in Spanish, so it's a lot of subtitles for you.
I can handle
not
a
for me.
subtitle here or there.
Okay. So strong recommend on Los Espookies because it's right up your alley. It's that same kind of humor that you and I love. A different type of humor, but one that I really appreciated nonetheless. Black Lady Sketch Show. Wow, that's a funny ass fucking show. Only one season in. Black Monday with Don Cheadle. That's a great fucking show. On Becoming a God in Central Florida. Incredible fucking show. That's another show that comes close to what Lodge 49 was doing, where it has things to say and it's saying them in a very weird and interesting way. But the only thing I really want to call out, the guy Stephen Conrad that made The Patriot has a show that completely flew under the radar this year, hoping that it comes back. So this is a show that was probably, I would say, the best show of last year, of 2019. It stars Ben Kingsley on fucking television, Dave. Ben Kingsley. Jimmy Simpson, Luis Guzman, Damon Harriman, who's having a moment right now. Jackie Weaver, a lot of great actors and actresses. Again, created by Stephen Conrad. The name of the show is Perpetual Grace LTD. You and I have talked about the show before in different contexts. If this show makes it 3 seasons, it'll probably be my favorite show of all time. And it's on a channel called Epix, which, I know. Good luck fucking finding it. Somebody at HBO needs to snap up Stephen Conrad and just like open up his fucking head and figure out what story he wants to tell and give him a Watchmen style budget to tell it. I think what he has to say about this is another show that goes back to what I said about The Patriot. It talks about loneliness. It talks about desperation a lot. It talks about like what you do to try to make up for lost time, what you try to do to make up for mistakes, the lies we tell ourselves about how we can fix things that we fucked up in the past.
Right.
Lots of big themes, lots of fun, crazy scenes with Ben Kingsley just talking shit to people and beating the hell out of people. And I don't want to ruin the plot. The plot is part of the magic. It's part of the fun. And so if you can find it streaming on Epix, I think you can find Epix as like one of those sub channels nested in Amazon Prime. Go watch it. What do you got for some Let Me Get Back to You? Is there anything you're watching now that you think might be good later?
Honestly, I've been watching nothing but movies lately, especially with piecing it together. Like, I'm watching more movies than ever, and the only thing I've watched is Righteous Gemstones twice through. That's it. So yeah, I'm sorry, but I got nothing for this category.
Well, I don't care that you don't. I don't.
No.
Fuck you.
Sound and Vision is the name, with movie trivia being the game. The theme-based weekly wonder where you, yes you the listener, can play along by guessing the films we're throwing at you by deciphering our cryptic clues. Join us while we break down movies in a way that only me and my weekly guests can. Come and find us on all platforms which podcasts are available and get your pop culture fix.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Q, the Bird Road crossover, and I hope you check out Bird Road. Like I said, he's been posting a couple of solo episodes he did, but we are going to be recording one this weekend, a a classic old school Bird Boys episode, which will be a lot of fun to do. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but it'll be fun. And also want to give a shout out and a little apology to my bear, Gina, who you guys heard on the special Piecing Dave Together episode a couple weeks back. She should have been on this one. She really should have, because she watches way more TV than me. I would almost say that of everything that was on my list, at least half of those shows I wouldn't have even ended up watching if she didn't make me, because she makes me watch a lot of TV. So shout out to Bear, Gina Mazzoni. Go check out GinaMazzoni.com for photography. I love you, Bear. She's sitting in here, by the way, right now while I record, and she's just, I don't know, she looks like she's mad. Well, anyway, let's close this thing out. I want to remind you all to make sure you're subscribed to Piecing It Together on your podcast app of choice. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and on Podchaser. And you can follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. Join the Facebook group Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about on the show. And what else we got? There's a Patreon. There's TeePublic with all our t-shirts. Go follow Bird Road. It's on all the Twitter and Facebook. And well, actually, it's not on Facebook. Q deactivated the account because he hates Facebook. But yeah, no need to get into that today. So let's leave you with a piece of music like we always do. This being a episode about television, I'm going to play a library track of mine that has been featured on a bunch of TV shows. I'm not going to list the shows off, but it has been used through some of the music libraries that feature my music, and it has been licensed before for a bunch of stuff, I think on like Investigative Discovery and some of those kind of channels. But this track is called Area 52, and it's a dark, creepy thing like what a lot of my music is. So enjoy it, and we will be back with more Piecing It Together next week, including another one of these special episodes and another regular episode coming up.
And all points west.